Hello, students. Welcome to another session of Indian Partnership Act 1932. The previous session we have discussed about notice given to one single partner. What is the effect of that notice with regard to other partners? That's where I have stopped the class. We were talking about various relationships among the partners. Until now, we have understood that all the partners are jointly as well as severally. Severally in this case means individually responsible for any loss caused by them or any one of the partner to the third party. In a partnership firm, we don't consider partner as well as the firm separate. Whatever mistakes a partner does, it binds all the partners as well as the firm. Till there, we have discussed about it in the previous sessions. As of now, we'll be discussing about what is the liability to third party. We have known that the partners are liable, right? A partner makes a mistake, all the partners are liable to third party. So, what is the question of liability of partners to third parties? In what way they are liable will be discussed in the session right now. Then why this discussion, ma'am? Because see, even though one partner has done a mistake, all partners have to bear it. So, in what way are the other partners going to bear it? What is their liability? That's what we'll be talking about it right now. This particular liability to third parties can be discussed under various heads like liability of a partner with regard to acts of the firm, and then liability of the firm with regards to the acts of a partner. We'll be discussing that. The first one is liability of a partner for acts of the firm. What do you mean by that? It means that even even though the partner is one, and here firm means any other partner, in case if he has committed a mistake because of which the other partner becomes liable, then what is the responsibility or what is the liability of the other partner? Let me explain it with an example. I'll just read out the example first, then we'll discuss it. There were certain people who were found to be partners in a firm, and when the acts constituting an infringement here means something breaking of law. Please get the meanings right. Infringement means breaking of law. Please underline that and mark it. Infringement means breaking of law. Certain persons were found to have been partners in a firm when the acts constituting breaking of law of a trademark by the firm took place. Trademark here means like you see Dairy Milk trademark is that blue color packet with chocolate in it, right? That is a trademark. Or ICICI trademark is that ICICI, the name itself is written. So nobody should copy those trademarks. Why? Because they actually deviate the customers. That's why they say trademarks. Let's say they have broken, a partnership firm had broken a law with regard to a trademark. So, what happens? It was held that they were liable for damages arising out of the alleged infringement, it being immaterial that the damages arose after the dissolution of the firm. What do you mean by that? The first part says that they were liable for damages arising out of this breaking of law. Whether these damages arose after the partnership had been closed is immaterial. What the court had said was, see, sir, you have broken the law. See, sirs, you have broken the law. So you have to pay the fine. Okay, now the partners were even more clever. They said, fine, sir, but we have closed down our partnership. We are not liable. Then the law said, sorry, sirs, that is immaterial. Whether you have closed down or not, you are liable. Whatever it is, you are liable. Whether the firm is there or not, the partners continue to be liable for the damages which have been occurred or which have been incurred would be the right word, incurred during the course of the partnership firm in force. Okay, hope you have understood that. Now we'll go for analysis of section 25. Section 25 of Partnership Act says, whatever be the case, one blind rule is the partners are jointly and severally responsible to third parties for all acts which come under the scope of their express and implied authority. Whatever it is, they have to bear all the liability. Express means whether clearly written or not. Implied means by the nature of circumstances which shows a finger on the conduct of the partner. Whatever liabilities arise, those liabilities have to be compulsorily paid off by the partners. Here the expression, that's what the other point is similar. It's clear, it's quite crystal clear. It says this is because that all acts done within the scope of authority are the acts done towards the business of the firm. The next one, the expression act of firm connotes means depicts an act or omission by all partners or by any partner or agent of the firm which gives rise to a right which is enforceable by or against the firm. Here, acts of the firm means what? See, the main definition is given on the top. Here, acts of the firm means what? Whatever omissions. Here, it doesn't only mean an act. Let's say the partners have not paid income tax. What is that? It's an omission. Whatever are the acts or omissions, in case if they have omitted to pay the tax, what will happen? The partners will have to face proceedings from income tax appellate tribunal. So whatever are the acts by the partners or agents of the firm, definitely they give a right, yeah, to be enforceable. Either partners can sue or they can be sued by others or with regard to this particular section. That is what whatever act had been done by the firm or other partners legally binds all the partners. Yeah, whether the firm is in force or not. Hope I'm clear with this section. Liability of partner for acts of the firm. Please underline the first point as well. That is the main definition. Then we'll go with regard to partners. This is firm. Now, what is the firm's responsibility in case of wrongful acts of a partner? What happens in case if the partner had committed any crime or committed any omission or any act which has resulted in a liability to the firm, then what happens? The firm is liable? Yes, very much liable. It is continuation of the first definition as well. It means whether any wrongful act or omission of a partner had been committed in the ordinary course of business of the firm or with the authority of the partners, and if a third party had incurred any particular loss, then automatically the firm here means all the partners have to bear that particular loss. Same extent, just like they share profits, they have to share losses as well. So I want you to first underline the definition whereby the wrongful act or omission of a partner in the ordinary course of business of a firm or with the authority of his partners, loss or injury is caused to any third party or any penalty is incurred, the firm is liable therefore to the same extent as the partner. Please underline the same extent as the partner with a different pen or you naked bold. To the same extent as a, or I'll take it from here. The firm is liable therefore to the same extent as the partner. And similarly, it's vice versa also. That is given in section 25. For whatever aspects firm do, partners are liable, and whatever aspect partners do, the firm is liable. So in analysis, he has explained it even more clearly. which says, one second, which says that this wrongful act or omission has to be done during the ordinary course of business. I just want to highlight this, one second. Let this be highlighted in red. Yeah, because this is important. This is what you have to understand. The firm is liable to same extent. What analysis is same? See, it's the blind rule. Partners are liable for firm whatever has happened in the course when of existence of the firm, and vice versa. Similarly, if partners have done any kind of mistake, the firm is liable. And when will the firm be liable? When should the particular omission be committed? That's where this particular definition differs from the first definition. What is it? Usually, the firm is liable to the same extent as the partner for any loss or injury caused to the third party. When should this loss or injury should be committed? In the ordinary course of the business of the firm and with the authority of the partners. Only at that time, this particular way, the firm will be liable. Now let's say the firm has been dissolved and one of the partners have committed a omission or a crime. Now, do you think all the other partners will be liable? No. But in the first case, firm has not paid income tax. Income tax notice has come to the firm after dissolution of the firm. In that case, all the partners will be liable. But in this case, as per section 26, why compulsorily whatever mistake had been done by the partners, it should not be done every day. It should be it should not be committed after the firm had been dissolved. It should have been committed at the time or in the ordinary course of the business, and the partners should have that particular authority. That's what we have learned, the rights of the partners as well. The what are the specific rights or authorities available to the partners as per section 13. Yeah, right to remuneration, right to share profit. So all this authority should be there. Then only they'll be liable. The firm will be liable for the acts of the fraud or omission committed by the party. Now let us go for an example. One of the two partners in a coal mine acted as a manager, was guilty of personal negligence in omitting to have the shaft of the mine properly fenced. As a result of it, an injury was caused to a workman. So, in this case, do you think the firm will be responsible? Yes, very, very much the firm will be responsible. So, you can go through the example. Hope I'm clear with these definitions as per 25 and 26, and as well I also have explained the difference between it. Now let us talk about misapplication. What do you exactly mean by the word misapplication? Okay. So usually misapplication means misrepresentation of the facts, not correctly explaining the facts, or acting in a fraudulent manner. In that case, who is liable? Obviously, the firm is liable. The same rule continues over here also. Before going into this particular section 27, let me just go for the example. A, B, and C are partners of a place for car parking. Okay, car parking. P stands his car in the parking place, but A sold out the car to the stranger. For this liability, the firm is liable for the acts of A. As simple as this. The A, B, and C have leased out their huge place for purpose, rather than leased out, I can say they are hiring this place for parking purposes. So people have come and parked their vehicles over there. So this particular A, a stranger named P, had parked this car. Now A very cleverly sold this car what P had parked to another person. So now B and C cannot say, see, this is an act committed by A, we are not liable. No, that partnership firm as a whole, along with B and C, are liable to pay damages or face legal consequences slapped on them by Mr. B. Even though the misapplication had been made by A, both B and C, as well as the partnership firm, that is A, B, and C together, has to face the consequences. So, this is what section 27 tells you. So, first, let me just go with the definition as well as analysis. So, what do you mean by a misapplication? A partner, during his normal course of business or with his apparent authority, he receives this money from a third party and he misapplies it. Money what? He does not give into partnership firm, or he just takes it for his own benefit instead of using it for the partnership firm. Or this is one scenario. Or in a firm in course of its business receives money or property from third party and the money is misapplied by any of the partners while it is in the custody of the firm itself is liable to make good of the clause. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? See, a partner, like in the example which I have explained it to you, A here is a partner and his authority is to lease. But what he has done, he had taken the property of the third party P. How did he do it? He misapplied it. It's not, he's only supposed to collect the rentals for purpose of parking, but he has sold away that particular property. In this situation, what happens? What happens in this situation? Automatically, whatever loss had been caused by the A to the third party, all the partners, that is A, B, and C, have to pay with it. So that is what a partner within his apparent authority receives money or property and misapplies it. You can ask me, madam, he has sold a car. Yeah, he had misapplied his authority over here. So in this situation, obviously, all the partners are held liable. Let's go with the analysis and I'll ask you to mark it. Clause A usually covers the case where partner acts within his authority and due to his authority, he receives money or property belonging to a third party. Here he had applied, see, parking place, A is looking after it. P had parked it by trusting A, that is his authority. Yeah, and misapplies it for money or property. For this provision to the attracted, it is not necessary that money should have actually come into the custody of the firm. Here, what happened? A had made good that particular crime. Even though A had sold it, A was the culprit, B and C still have to pay the loss. That's what section 27 tells you. Okay, here because of the authority of being a partner, the partner had received certain property. Okay, what is that property? Car. He has to take care of the car. But what did this person B do? He sold this particular car. That is misapplied. Now, what the partnership firm, are they liable or not? Yes, they are liable. Did the money come into partnership firm? No. But why should they be liable? Because the Act says so. This is the biggest disadvantage of a partnership firm. Hope you have understood it. The next part, we'll now analyze clause B of section 27. It says, on the other hand, the provision of clause B would be attracted when such money or property has come into the custody of the firm and it is misapplied by any of the partners. That is the difference over here. Let's say partnership firm has got cash reserves up till 5 lakh rupees. Okay, 5 lakh rupees they have got the cash reserve, but let's say this particular partner A had misapplied or misappropriated 5 lakhs. He had misapplied or misappropriated means literally stolen this 5 lakh rupees. Even in this case, the partnership itself is at loss. Can partnership just take up any proceedings against A as per law? No. They say that the firm itself has to make good its loss. They can either remove the partner, B and C still only have the responsibility along with A of making good that particular loss. So, what differentiates these two clauses in clause section 27? As per section 27, first clause is with regard to a partner misappropriating a property which he had received on account of his authority. As per the second clause, the money of the partnership is itself stolen by other partners. In that case, whatever be the case, the firm would be liable for the loss. Okay, so that's what. But there's an exception to this rule. All the three paras are quite important. In case if receipt of this particular money by one partner is not within his apparent authority, his receipt cannot be regarded as a receipt by the firm and other partners will not be liable unless the money received comes into their possession. What do you mean by that? Or under their control. I'll take this particular example only, that is A, B, and C parking place business. Let's say A is a sleeping partner. He is not authorized to let the cars being parked on rent. He is not taking part in business. Money he does not have the authority. In this situation, what will A do? He just comes down, he walks over there on a random day, sells a stranger's car to another party. Okay, in this case, do you think B and C are liable? No, they are not liable. Why are they not liable? Because A itself does not possess this particular apparent authority. So please be very careful. It can be asked as true or false as well. In case if it is not within the scope of his apparent authority, then automatically the other partners will not be liable for the loss. Okay, hope you're clear with it. Hope you're clear with the understanding. Then let's talk about rights of transferee of a partner's interest. Who is called as transferee? Right now, transferee means I have told you now one partner, instead of continuing as a partner, he wants to put his son as a partner. He does not want to participate in the partnership. Instead, he wants his son to take part in partnership firm. Usually, how will that transfer take place? He wants to share his I mean to say, he wants to forego his share of profits or share of authority in favor of his son. Can that be done? Can that be done? All these rights have been explained in section 29. What does it say? It, so, once a partner wishes to transfer his interest means what? The interest of being a partner. When the firm is very much in order, right? He wants to transfer his right in partnership firm. He wants to appoint somebody in his place, that is by way of transfer. Then what is the right of this particular transferee partner? Does he enjoy the same kind of rights? Does he enjoy the same kind of rights? Not exactly. Not exactly. Why? Because the partnership relationship is usually based on mutual confidence. And when a transferee partner comes into being, he usually does not enjoy the same rights and privileges as the original partner. Even though he has become a partner on account of a transfer, usually he will not be in a position to enjoy the same rights as that of a partner. Let us see into it. Let us just go into it. In case if there is a transfer by a partner of his interest in the firm, either like how this transfer happens, another person might buy it or how does he do by mortgaging or by creation by him of a charge on such interest, does not entitle the transferee during the continuance of the firm. I want you to underline this particular point. Does not entitle the transferee during the continuance of the firm to interfere in the conduct of the business or to require accounts or to inspect books of the firm, but entitles the transferee only to receive the share of profits of the transferring partner, and the transferee shall accept the account of profits agreed to by partners. So, who can be called as a transferee partner? Like what? Let's say a partner in a personal capacity, in his personal capacity, has taken a loan from somebody. Okay, A. Okay, so Mr. A, now the partner says, I'm unable to repay the loan to you. So you can take my partnership interest. That is called as by mortgage or by creation by him of a charge on any interest, or on basis of natural love and affection. He can definitely he can definitely transfer his interest either by mortgage. Mortgage means what? In case if a partner had like had taken a loan in his personal capacity from somebody, and instead of repaying it, he says that you take my charge as a partner. Or in case if any person wishes to in case if any person wishes to transfer his interest in the property by on account of natural love and affection, he can do that. But can the new partner enjoy the same rights? Usually, okay. So in that situation, usually he, even though he becomes a partner, he only becomes a partner for sharing profits. But this person usually he does not interfere. That is, once a person's had transferred his right of being a partner to another person, the another person usually does not interfere in conduct of the business or inspection of books or receiving the share or any other matter related to business, but only for receiving the share of profits. But why does it happen? Because it's just an assigning an interest, not particularly a mutual confidence. Like if it's a chartered accountant firm, a chartered accountant had transferred his partnership right to another person. Let's say he's a non chartered accountant, he can't participate in that particular service of an auditor. Yeah, hope you're clear with it. And what happens to this particular transferee partner during dissolution? In case of dissolution, definitely he'll also be entitled to the share of assets of the firm. But mind you, this transferee partner usually is not entitled to participate in the business. The same thing had been given in analysis of section 29. If you are unable to understand this particular definition, you can go through the analysis. The same thing, and all the 4 points, if you want, you can write. In case if it is a short answer question, I'd suggest you write it from the analysis itself. It's quite simple. He had explained the details and analysis in a simple manner. What are the rights of the transferee? So you can go through those rights clearly so that it will be easier for you to understand. Please highlight these. That is, in case he will not be entitled to usually interfere in conduct of the business or verify the accounts or inspect the books, but anyhow he'll be eligible for sharing the profits. At the same case, definitely he'll be eligible to receive the share of assets of the firm during dissolution and for purpose of ascertaining his sale. Okay, so uh, usually here he had stated with regard to section 31 as well, right? uh, a partner usually cannot usually by transferring his own interest uh, just transfer his right just like that without the permission of other partners. It means the other partners should also agree the incumbent as a partner. Only then he can transfer his right in a partnership firm. Why? As I told you, this particular right with regard to all partners being liable applies here as well. A partner just usually cannot transfer his own interest just like that. Make another person as a partner in his place. The other person should also agree to accept the transferee to be a partner. Then only he can make the other person partner. That is, he can forego his right as a partner. Along with it, this particular right is available to all the partners. Okay, and this right is available in interest as well as tangible property. So I advise you to underline this particular line. This can be asked in MCQ as well as short answers. A partner cannot, by transferring his own interest, make anybody else a partner in his place unless the other partners agree to accept that person as a partner. Please mark it in red. At the same time, a partner is not debarred from transferring his interest. Okay, so this one I'll put it in pink, a lighter shade, so that it'll be easier for you to interest. I mean to say understand. Okay, now let's talk about minors as well as section 30. Okay, till date we have clearly studied that a minor usually cannot be a party to a contract. In capacity to contract, we have known that a minor usually cannot become a partner. Then, in this situation, what is his position with regard to a partnership firm? As per Partnership Act, while we were talking about the differences, we have decided that a minor can be a partner only for benefits. Definitely, he is not interested with the duty of taking care of the business or so. He is only entitled for the benefits of the partnership. He usually has a right to the property and of the property of the properties of the firm. Mind you, but while before the minor is being admitted as a partner, all the partners of the partnership firm should agree for the minor to be admitted in the partnership firm. Then okay, fine. What about the acts performed by the minor? Acts performed by the minor. We know one partner, if he commits any crime, all the partners will be liable. Then what about the acts committed in case if a fraud had been committed by a minor? Then what is the partner's right with respect to these particular acts of a minor? In that case, usually minor is not personally liable for any kind of acts. Usually, with regard to minors, whether they can sue the partners in case if any payment or a share of profits have not been paid by him, can he do that? Usually, a valuation is made in accordance with the rules as per section 48, but he does not have the capacity to sue the partners for non-payment. Now let us see what is given in this screenshot. Usually, as I've explained, all these points are important. They can be asked individually or jointly. By because section 30 happens to be a favorite of the examiner. Individually, as my MCQs or true or false. I mean to say all the points with regard to benefit of partnership uh, with regard to minor can be asked as a short answer question as well. So all the points are important. So let me discuss. Usually, a person who is a minor according to a law to which he is subject to may not be a partner of the firm, but with the consent of the but with the consent of all the partners for time being may be admitted for the benefits of partnership firm. That's what I have discussed. Usually, this minor has a right to share of property and profits of the firm as may be agreed upon, and he definitely may have access to the accounts of the firm. Minor's share is liable for the acts of the firm. Okay, minor's share. Please underline this in red. I haven't explained it. Minor's share means what? Whatever share of profits have been earned by the minor, irrespective of, I mean to say, with regard to sections 25 to 27, this share of profits may be affected. Like in case of any liabilities on account of partnership or liability on account of any partners act, in that case minor will not be affected, but his share of profits only will be affected. But and the minor will not be prosecuted like other partners. So this is an important point which you have to clearly understand. Then can this particular minor sue the partners for an account or a payment of his share of the property or profits of the firm during severing? Severing means what? When he has uh, uh, when he has stopped continuing as a partner of the firm, can he sue the other partners for payment of his share of property or profits of the firm? Yeah. Usually, in that case, what they say is the minor cannot sue. The minor cannot sue the partners for account of payment of share in his property. He cannot sue. That's one thing. But there is another exception to it, as always. What does that particular exception provide? It provides that in case of all partners acting together or any partner entitled to dissolve the firm upon the notice of to other partners may elect in such suit to dissolve the firm, and thereupon the court shall proceed with the suit as one for dissolution and for settling accounts between the partners, and the amount of the share of the minor shall be determined along with the share of the partners. What do you mean by that? See, usually if the partners alone dissolve the partnership firm, and if they decide not to pay the minor, then the minor cannot sue the other partners. But in case if the other partners in case if the partners definitely they don't want to involve minor in the share of property during the time of dissolution, then he cannot sue. But in case if the partners themselves dissolve the firm, because why do they dissolve? Because a notice had been served to them by court of law, and if the court of law is involved in dividing the property among the partners, including the minor, in such case, the minor will get his share. This is an exception given to section 48. I want you to underline the whole of the paragraph. Hope I am clear with it. This can be asked as an short note as well. Okay. What happens after the minor attains his majority? That is what happens to the minor after he has attained 18 years, and he has a knowledge that like he is now the partner of the partnership firm. Then this particular person has to give a public notice within 6 months saying that whether he wants to continue as a partner or whether he does not want to continue as a partner. In case if he does not give any notice, automatically he is considered to be a partner in that particular firm. So once a minor attains his majority, that is he crosses the 18 years, within 6 months time, he has to give a notice. Okay, within 6 months time, he has to give a notice stating that he is a partner of so and so firm, or he does not want to continue as a partner of so and so firm. In case if he doesn't give that notice, what will happen? Automatically, he'll be considered as a partner. Okay. And in case after attaining 6 months of his attaining majority or obtaining knowledge that he had been admitted to the benefits of the partnership firm, sometimes the whatever benefits of the partnership firm will be taken by his guardian, that is parents. That's why this particular clause had been included. In that case, he might not be knowing about it. In that situation, in case if he gets to know about it, okay, immediately within 6 months he has to give a public notice. I'll just explain this part of his obtaining knowledge that he had been admitted to the benefits of partnership firm. What do you mean by that? See, sometimes minor may not be knowing it. That is, let's say his father had, as his authority as a guardian, had put this particular minor in a partnership firm. Whatever benefits are accruing to this minor, the father is collecting them and accounting for it. After few days, let's say the father had passed away without telling the minor. Now the minor got to know about it from other partners or from some other ways. In that situation, what is his duty? He is supposed to give a public notice within 6 months. That's what they are saying. Either obtaining 18 years or obtaining his knowledge that he had been admitted to the benefits of the partnership, whichever date is later, that person should usually give a public notice stating that whether he wishes to continue or not. That's what I wish you people to underline and get to know about it. And in case if he fails to give it, automatically he'll be considered as a partner. In case if he doesn't know madam throughout his lifetime, still he'll not be uh, he'll not be dealt as per these provisions. He has to prove in court of law that he's not aware that he's a partner. Okay, then in that case also he'll be given an opportunity to continue or not. In case if a person as like the same continuation of this point only, where any person has been admitted as a minor to the benefit of a partnership in a firm, the burden of proving the fact that such person had no knowledge of such admission until a particular date after the expiry of 6 months of his attaining majority shall lie on the person asserting the facts. What do you mean by asserting the fact? Here, let's say a minor is there. A minor had been appointed, the same example, continuing the same example, he doesn't know. The father passes away. Now, now that particular partnership firm where this particular minor is a partner is in losses. Now, one of the partner comes and says, see, you are also the partner as per the above rules stated. You are also liable for the losses of the partnership firm. In that case, the minor may say, see, I do not know that I was a partner in the firm. Everything my father used to handle. Even though I'm 25 years right now, I'm not in a position, I don't know about this. Then who should file a suit? And actually, even if a minor files a suit or the partner files a suit, who should prove the fact that this minor had acted as a partner? This particular thing shall lie, that's what he says, shall lie on the person asserting the fact. In this case, the person who is saying the fact that a minor is a partner is another partner of the firm. So he only should prove in court of law that this particular minor at the time of his minority was admitted as a partner. He should show the documents to that effect. Then only minor will be tried against those provisions. In case if this particular minor becomes a partner, then what about his rights and liabilities? He usually his rights and liabilities will become that as that of a regular partner. That is what now, along with share of profits and assets, he'll also be liable to third parties for all acts of the firm done since he was admitted to the benefits of the partnership firm. That's the most important point. This partner shall be liable to third parties for all acts of the firm done since he was admitted to the benefits of the partnership firm. And his share in the property and profits of the firm shall be the share during which he was entitled as a minor. Okay, in case if he wants to continue in the partnership firm, definitely just like all partners will be liable. And mind you, the most important part which you have to understand is he'll be liable to all the liabilities as well. He'll be liable to all the liabilities as well. In case if this particular person does not want to become a partner, then usually his rights and liabilities shall continue to be those of minor under this section up to the date he gives the public notice. Okay, his only rights and liabilities will continue. Mayane, remember, his liabilities will continue only till he gives public notice. That is, he literally does not have any liabilities. His rights and liabilities will be that of a minor itself. Why? In case if he does not want to continue as a partner, then his rights and liabilities will be same that like that of a minor. And till what time these rights and liabilities will continue? Till he gives a public notice. And mind you, he'll not be liable for any acts of the firm done after the notice. And in case, usually he'll be entitled to sue the partners for a share of the property and profits. Now, after he becomes a major, after he becomes a major, he can sue the partners of the firm. Just now we discussed that he cannot sue the partners of the firm in case of a dissolution of the firm for his share of profits. But he can sue the partners of the firm after becoming a major. That's what this provision states. This points particular 7 and 8 does not affect the provisions of the section 28. Section 28 usually talks about Section 28 of the Partnership Act says that a person by estoppel or a partner by estoppel, yeah, he has misrepresented himself by a partner, will still be considered as a partner. So this particular subsection 7 and 8 with regard to minor usually does not affect the provisions of partner by estoppel, which we have discussed in the previous sessions, different types of partners. He'll be usually be given the same treatment. He has misrepresented. That is in case if that person happens to be a minor. The 7 and 8 will not affect the provisions of section 28. That is in case if this particular minor had become a partner by estoppel, usually these provisions do not apply to him. That's what uh, it explains. Okay, this analysis you can go through it. All the points, all the sub points, and from 1 to 8 are quite important. I want you to go through them thoroughly. And the much more explanation with regard to rights and liabilities have been clearly stated. You give a reading with regard to the definition once, and you have to memorize all these rights and liabilities which we have just discussed. Okay, I'm highlighting all of them in pink because they happen to be quite important. They can be asked uh, jointly or they can be asked separately as well. Yeah, this one also. After attaining majority, what are the duties of a minor? Just go through this carefully uh, and please let me know whether you have got any doubts in this particular topic. This happens to be one of the important topics of Indian Partnership Act, and I want you to be very clear with this particular topic. With this, I choose to close this particular session. In case of any doubts, please let me know. We'll be talking about the legal consequences of admission of a new partner or retirement of a new partner in the next session. Thank you all.